78 green, forehand technique. The player's technique should now be sound. Their grips and swing paths should be within the parameters and the focus should shift to weapon development. The player needs to develop a more mature unit turn, increased load, use of the ground, and greater racket acceleration with minimal head movement. .78 green, forehand, footwork. Now that the court is bigger and the ball is bouncing faster and higher, the player should be able to effectively use all three stances at the appropriate time, establishing a square stance or a semi-open stance for more offensive shot selection and an open stance when necessary. The player should be timing his or her split step correctly and utilizing a quick first step to the ball. The player should also learn how to optimize his or her footwork with the drop step, the crossover step, and the bounce step. It's also very important for the player to load correctly when he or she does have to hit open stance out of the corner or in a defensive position. The player should understand that power should come from the load and unit turn, not from increasing the size of their swing. .78 green, forehand, play. Now that the player's basic technique and footwork have been established, the focus points towards more weapon development, shot selection, and basic tactics. All of these skills are built on good ball recognition. The player's tactical goals are to be as offensive as possible, take ground whenever possible, and use his or her weapons to control and win the point. In order for the player to utilize his or her weapon and control the point, he or she also has to be able to defend well and give ground when necessary. In today's game, most players will need to be able to use their forehand as a weapon. Players need to know how to use patterns that will maximize their opportunities to hit forehands, and when the opportunity presents itself, attack short balls with a put away or an approach to the net. .78 green, backhand, technique. The player's technique should be sound. Their grips and swing paths should be within the parameters and the focus should shift to weapon development. The player needs to continue to develop and refine elements of the unit turn, the load, racket acceleration, and balance. The player should now have solid technique on their backhand slice. They should be able to execute the slice with one hand, taking the racket back with the non-dominant hand on the throat of the racket. They should be able to hit an offensive slice, a defensive slice, or a drop shot with the same basic technique. .78 green, backhand, footwork. Now that the court is bigger and the ball is bouncing faster and higher, the player's use of all three stances at the appropriate time is very important. In order to establish a square stance or a semi-open stance for a more offensive shot selection, the player will have to time their split step correctly and utilize a quick first step to the ball. The player should also learn how to optimize their footwork with the crossover step and the bounce step. It's also very important for the player to load correctly when he or she does have to hit an open stance shot out of the corner or from a defensive position. The player should understand that power should come from the load and unit turn, not from increasing the size of their swing. At this level, efficient diagonal movement should be emphasized so that the player is able to optimize their court positioning. .78 green, backhand, play. Now that the player's basic technique and footwork have been established, the focus for the backhand points toward weapon development, shot selection, and basic techniques. All of these skills are built on ball recognition. The player's tactical goals are to be as offensive as possible, take ground whenever possible, and use his or her weapons to control and win the point. In order for the player to utilize his or her weapon and control the point, he or she also has to be able to defend well and give ground when necessary. Although the forehand should be the player's primary weapon, it's very important for the player to be able to set it up with good backhands cross court and to be able to finish with a backhand down the line. .78 green, net game, volley technique. As the court size increases along with the speed of the ball, volley execution becomes more challenging. At this level, the player needs to possess the ability to handle increasingly difficult volleys while maintaining the correct technique. In order to challenge the player, the coach should feed harder with more spin and at various heights with variation. .78 green, net game, volley footwork. In addition to solidifying the volley technique that was established on the 60-foot court, the player should continue to develop and refine transitional footwork and high percentage net coverage. The player may choose to use different types of footwork on the approach shot, coming in behind slices, flat shots, top spins, angles, and even drop shots. Depending on time, position, and pace, the player may choose to use the bounce step. The player needs to be able to stick the volley from the outside foot, or if they have time, while stepping in. Finally, the player needs to cover the angle that's created by the first volley. .78 green, net game, volley play. Now that the player is on a full-size court, high percentage net coverage is even more important. Players need to know what part of the net to cover based on the quality and positioning of their approach shot. The player must learn that they cannot cover the entire net, but have to choose court positioning that will allow them to cover the opponent's most likely target. Optimal net coverage will put the opponent in a position where they have to pass or lob with a lower percentage target. .78 green, net game, overhead technique. The player should continue to work on executing overheads to all parts of the court. At this level, he or she needs to be able to end points with the overhead while comfortable using the continental grip. Now that the court is bigger and the lob becomes more of a factor, the player must be able to move laterally or up and back, quickly maintaining a sideways position in order to execute the overhead from all parts of the midcourt. The player should be able to move quickly to their backhand side in order to hit overheads instead of high backhand volleys, maintaining a raised non-dominant hand while in the loading phase. The player should also be learning how to use the scissor kick when moving back quickly for deep lobs. .78 green, serve technique. Now that the player is able to execute the serve with a rhythmic and well-synchronized motion, the focus should shift to increased power and improved accuracy. As a player's serve evolves, the speed of their serve should increase and their accuracy should improve. One major key in good upper body technique is the full extension of the tossing arm and maintaining that extension into the loading stage to ensure the player is not dropping the tossing arm too quickly. If the player's lower body mechanics are correct and efficient, the speed of their serve will increase as their leg drive becomes more explosive. If there's a deficiency in their lower body mechanics, power and accuracy will be lost. To ensure maximum explosion in the leg drive, correct lower body technique is a must, as it will result in both legs firing. As the player moves into the loading stage, the front hip will push forward naturally as trunk rotation is occurring. Improved lower body loading and increased leg drive should translate to a contact point with full extension and both feet off the ground. The player should land inside the court on their front foot. 78 green, serve play. Players at this level should be able to utilize their first serves as a weapon. They should understand the importance of using their first serve to get free points or weak returns. They also need to understand the importance of holding serve. They should be able to hit flat, slice, and topspin serves to all 3/3 of both boxes. Players hold serve by using their serve to set up returns that play to their strengths. They also hold serve by having a second serve which is dependable and heavy. The player should be able to make at least 90% of their second serves. "78 green, return, technique." The same technical elements that we outlined on the 60-foot court need to be strengthened at this level so that the player can handle serves with more pace and spin. The return is very similar to the ground stroke. It begins with a good split step, followed by a quick unit turn. The unit turn is the most important element of the return technique because there is no time for a big backswing. The contact point and the follow-through will be dictated by the speed and bounce height of the incoming serve. The coach should emphasize that although the backswing is abbreviated, the follow-through should be as long as possible. At this level, we want the player to be able to handle first serves with more pace and spin. We also want the player to be more aggressive with second serve returns and use them as weapons. The biggest difference at this level is that the player needs to execute a very quick grip change coming out of the split step with very little time to spare. "78 green, return, footwork." Similar to what we outlined on the 60-foot court, here the most important elements are the correct timing of the split, which should occur right before the player's opponent makes contact with their serve. It's also important for the returner to choose the correct stance. On slower serves, the returner should be able to step in and attack, whereas on faster serves, the player may have to hit out of an open stance. The biggest difference at this level is the returner's reaction time needs to be quicker and the first move to the ball more explosive. "78 green, return, play." Again, the returner should be able to adjust their backswing based on the speed and bounce height of the serve. The player should also understand the concept of high percentage shot selection. This means returning hard serves to the biggest parts of the court and looking for smaller targets when they're able to take an offensive stance. In addition, the player needs to understand how to formulate a plan for breaking serve. This begins with a clear understanding of what they can do with their return. If a player has moderate grips within the parameters, they should be able to execute a quick, efficient grip change on most returns. However, when facing an opponent with a very big first serve, the player may have to block the return. The player should also be learning how to position him or herself when returning so as to neutralize their opponent's favorite serves.